Hola, me llaman Mari y aprendí español en más o menos un año y medio. Hi, my name is Mari and I live in Minnesota, United States of America, and I wanted to share how my journey went learning Spanish. I learned it in about a year and a half, I would say, from like beginner to fluent. And I know when I was starting to learn, I was super curious about how people get from, point A to point B. So here I am making a video to share kind of my language learning process. Well, the first thing I did was start to listen because I have an aunt who speaks Spanish, well, cousin who speaks Spanish that always inspired me because she speaks really fluently, but she didn't learn until she was in her 20s. When I asked her what she did to be able to become fluent and like speak in a very native sounding way, she told me the most important thing is listening. How are you going to talk? What's the point of talking, I guess, if you can't listen? Like, who are you going to respond to? I think speaking English, we get very used to just being able to like speak and being encouraged to speak your voice, at least in the United States. But when learning another language, I think it's really key to be able to understand first. So I started watching series in Spanish. Sometimes I would watch with always Spanish audio, and then sometimes Spanish subtitles as well. But I found when I did that, it was much more boring because I couldn't always understand what was going on. So when I did do Spanish subtitles with Spanish audio, I would usually try to pick a series or a movie that I'd already seen so that I already kind of knew the plot, what was going on, especially Disney. I found that Disney movies are amazing for doing Spanish audio because all of them are created with Spanish audio as well. So it's not like when you watch a show with people speaking English and then you put the audio on Spanish and it's like weird because the lips don't match up, It's really good to do Spanish subtitles because you get to actually read what they're saying then, so it really helps your brain, helped my brain, get used to like where to separate the words, because when you're first listening to a new language and they're speaking fast, you don't even know like which word is which a lot of the time, And so when you have the Spanish subtitles on, even if you don't understand what they're saying, at least you're starting to be able to distinguish where the different words are separated and like kind of sentence structure. So I did that a lot. I just made it a habit to watch at least one like 40-minute chunk of Spanish content each week, probably at first. And then I was also starting to listen to much more Spanish music and translating the lyrics so I could slowly understand like what they were saying. That was like a solid study session when I would do that, because I would find a song that I like, be listening to it, and then one night I would have to sit down and be like, okay, I'm looking up the song, I'm gonna translate it like part by part into English. So I guess it takes a lot of self-discipline in some way, because all of these things are just like getting myself to do these things in my free time, and I don't know, if you don't have any self-discipline, then it might be hard to get yourself to do that because it's not always fun like studying, but it's interesting, and if you're dedicated, nice. Another thing that I did was, so I work with children. If you don't work with kids and if you don't like reading, you can probably just skip like a minute to the next part. But if you like reading or if you work with children in any capacity, what I would do is check out children's books in Spanish and just start reading them. And I would read them out loud to children. I could have read them out loud to myself, yes, but I just felt like it made more sense to read them out loud to babies. So luckily I had some babies in my life at the time I was studying, so every time I would see them, I would just bring some Spanish children's books and read them out loud multiple times. Like I would read each book probably at least 5 or 6 times. Not necessarily all in one day. I would just check them out from the library, and it would just help my mouth get used to pronouncing words in Spanish and sentences in Spanish as they are like naturally natively written, not me trying to like piece together a sentence for myself, but just reading a simple children's book. And then by doing that and reading it, like each time I would read it, even if I didn't understand hardly anything the first time around, by the 3rd, 4th, 5th time that I would read a book, I would actually be grasping concepts and picking up sentences, connecting like what was happening in the pictures throughout the book. They also have books that I forget what they're called right now, but it basically has Spanish text and English text, sometimes on the same line, one under another, and other times it's like page and page, like one whole page Spanish and the other whole page translated English. And so that would be nice to try and read to myself, either out loud or in my head, the Spanish page, and then going over and reading the English page to get context, going back to the Spanish page, reading it again, and just kind of like teaching myself in that way through books. Okay, besides reading, I would look up videos on YouTube. So you're already on YouTube, nice. I'll comment some of my favorite Spanish tutors in the comments. One is Spring Spanish for pronunciation videos. Another one is Spanish After Hours, which is just good listening, like blog, intentional for Spanish learners practice. And the third one is Bilingüe Blog, which has so many different types of videos for like Spanish learning tips. He's a Spanish tutor, he's awesome. Yeah, I'll have links to there. And basically I would watch these 3 YouTubers regularly, like daily. Pronunciation practice, practicing and focusing in on different verb tenses, vocabulary, just listening practice, all different stuff, but especially for reading the books out loud and practicing like my own speaking in my own time or with babies. I would watch the pronunciation videos and like repeat out loud specifically things that these tutors would be saying, whether it was like a pronunciation video or not, so that my mouth could get used to saying things the way that they are saying them, so that I could sound more fluent and natural sounding. It's super easy to, like as an English speaker at least, say the R completely wrong, like ahora, ahora, instead of ahora. And those types of things I completely learned on YouTube, just practicing, repeating the things that people would say and taking tips on like how to move my tongue in ways that I was not accustomed to doing. Definitely watching YouTube videos and repeating things out loud, focusing on like tongue placement and pronunciation will help a ton, helped me a ton before going to Mexico. So after like 5 months of just studying by myself from January to May of 2023, then I went to Mexico. And in Mexico, I went to a Spanish-speaking school and studied there for like 2 months with a teacher in person. When I arrived, I was already able to understand much of what she would say to me because I was practicing my listening so much for the months before I left. With her help, I was able to speak more and more and gain my confidence. She would correct me. Sometimes we would just have conversations, other times we would do worksheets in the booklet. And if you can't go abroad, like to a Spanish-speaking country, to be able to immerse yourself and learn in this way, I highly recommend 2 different websites. Preply and italki are both like online language tutor sites where language tutors can sign up and offer classes. Some are more structured than others, like some are just conversation practice and you bring material that you want to practice. So for example, if I was watching YouTube videos on practicing like the past tense or future tense, then I would schedule a meeting for like the same week or the coming week with my tutor, and I would bring questions to her or tell her like, hey, I'm practicing this verb tense in the past or future, can we just go through and do a bunch of examples together? Or I would have done a bunch of examples or like tried to create my own examples before the tutoring session, and I would bring them to her and we'd go through them together and she would correct me and offer me like other tips. So you don't have to go abroad to do Spanish classes. You can find them for fairly cheap online. Online, I think I paid between $6 and $8 for like 50-minute lessons with my tutors in those months before I went to Mexico, and they definitely helped me improve and build my confidence in like speaking as well. So that's Preply and italki. Or of course, yes, you can go abroad and find like local Spanish schools that will oftentimes set you up with homestays, and then you can go on a little trip and improve your Spanish a lot studying in that way. So from Mexico, this is the thing that really made me be able to learn in like the 1.5 year time and become fluent. I just continued traveling. So I left the Spanish school in Mexico and I went to a beach in the state of Oaxaca, Mexico. And then I went to Colombia and I was backpacking in Colombia for a month. And then I went to Argentina and I lived in Argentina for 9 months. I started working on my computer offering English classes on Preply, actually, one of those 2 tutoring sites. It definitely was the cherry on top that helped me be able to learn Spanish, I would say towards the end of my time in Argentina, I was speaking fluently, because when I arrived there, I was still like out of my comfort zone. I was able to hold a conversation with people one-on-one in Spanish, or maybe like small group, 3 or 4 people. I could keep up, but as soon as native speakers began talking like fast amongst themselves, I would get lost. And I continued studying on YouTube in my free time, and by the time I left Argentina, I was able to like speak in groups. I would still not understand everything 100% if they were speaking super fast and with, you know, different slangs and whatever, but I was able to like notice when I didn't understand and ask, wait, what did you say then? And I was understanding the majority of conversations and able to like interject and be a part of the conversation, even if it was a little bit slower than I would have been speaking if I were speaking English. And also, this will be the last tip that I'll say, is not using Google Translate for everything. So I have an app called Word Reference that I recommend a lot. It is Word Reference. That was like a game changer in being able to translate stuff, because it has many more contexts. It will give you examples of ways that the word can be used, whereas Google Translate sometimes doesn't understand the context or translates incorrectly. On Word Reference, you can go in and like just translate specific words that you don't know, and it'll be a lot more clear than it is on Google Translate. Then there was one also, I think, called Lingui. I don't use anymore because Word Reference is my favorite, but it's another Spanish dictionary that's better than translating on Google Translate. So highly recommend downloading those 2 apps and trying to use them to just fill in the gaps while you're learning Spanish rather than Google Translate, because honestly, Google Translate is really helpful sometimes, but the majority, like as you improve your Spanish skills, it'll be easier and easier to just like narrow down the things that you don't know and use these apps for more clarity. So that was my journey of learning Spanish. I don't think I forgot anything. Just remember, like, listen more than you try to speak in the beginning, and naturally you'll be able to speak more as you understand more. Good luck on your journeys, and check out those channels that I'm gonna be putting below, because they seriously helped me so much, so much. All right, peace.